Hello friends, so good to be with you today. We are in Revelation chapter 13. This is going to give a pretty comprehensive look at the beast. I won't say Antichrist, but Antichrist isn't really used that much here in Revelation. You find it mostly used in 1 John, 2 John. He began to talk about the Antichrist and the spirit of the Antichrist. But here is going to refer to the beast, and this is going to be that man of sin that comes in these last days, and we're going to see what takes place. Let's begin here in chapter 13, verse 1. It says, "And the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name." Now, I want you to notice something. This beast comes out of the sea. The sea is always representative of nations, or it's represented out of humanity. It's not going to be some spiritual angelic being. It's not going to be anything fallen from that realm. This is going to be somebody that comes out of humanity. It's out of the nations. And the word beast is a Greek word, theranon, that means probably the best definition of it would be as a wild, venomous beast. This is something that is to be dreaded. This is something that is considered to be very wicked. And of course, you have to remember that John's not giving necessarily a dictation over what he's seeing. I mean, he's just getting a vision, and he's trying to describe what he's seeing. I'm sure that if you were in his place in 100 AD, all of those years ago, and somebody held up a telephone, an iPhone, if somebody held up a computer, how would you describe that? How would you describe what you saw? Well, that's really what he was trying to do. He simply had a vision of what was coming, and it was symbolic. It was symbolic, but he sees this beast rise up, and the symbolism is reality. It is the symbol of something that is legitimately going to happen. So there is going to be a man that is going to rise up out of the sea of humanity. And because of all of the personal pronouns that are attributed to it, this beast is emblematic of a person. It's going to be a real person. Him, he, his. It's a person. However, you've got to realize he is very, very wicked. Now, he didn't begin that way. That's not how he's going to start off. But as the time progresses over this 7-year period of time, you're going to see something come out of him that is demonic and is really driven by satanic power. So he doesn't begin that way. He starts out as a wonderful, charismatic hero. Revelation 6 calls him the peacemaker. And he comes on this white horse conquering and to conquer. And he has a 7-year plan. And he's going to bring peace to all of the world. He's going to be the answer to everything. But as he gets to that halfway point, he's going to break his covenant. He's going to make peace between the world of Islam and between Israel and everybody else. He's going to have the perfect answer, and he's going to have a covenant that's going to be made. But he's going to get halfway through that, and he's going to break that covenant, and it's all downhill from there. So we see that what he's also going to have, if I could give another description of him, he's really going to have world dominance. And I want you to remember that this is going to come from Satan, the great dragon. And he had that to give. I want you to remember whenever Jesus was on the Mount of Temptation, do you remember that Satan took him up into this exceeding high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world? And said, all of these things, all of the power, all of the authority, all of the wealth, all of the influence, I will give you if you come and worship me. And Jesus did not argue with that. He knew that that was given to him. Satan said that. He said, for all of this has been given to me, and I give it to whosoever I will. Well, where did he get that authority? He got that from Adam. And so he took that, and it was stolen authority. It was a stolen position, but nonetheless, it was given to him, and he was operating in. So he has the ability to bring this individual up and to give him authority in all of the earth. And we're going to see that it's driven by demonic power. It's empowered through demonic influence. So verse 2 said, the beast I saw, it resembled a leopard, but it had feet like a bear and a mouth like a lion. And it said the dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. See, just exactly what Satan had told Jesus there in that Mount of Temptation. I'll give you all these things. And this is what he's done. This dragon, Satan, Lucifer, he gave this beast, this man, power of his throne and great authority. And actually, you can see that this is very similar to how he appeared over in Daniel 600 years before, because Daniel gave the description. He talked about a lion, a bear, a leopard with 4 wings, a beast with 10 horns. So it's the same thing. Daniel was given a prophetic word concerning this. John, in his vision, he saw the same things. Now, here's what's interesting. How does the beast gain affluence? What is it that happens that gives him power over so many nations, causing people literally to wonder about him and also to worship him? Well, verse 3 says, and one of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed, and the whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. Now, what does that mean? Well, you can see as we get down here a little bit later, down in verse 14, it says he was wounded with a sword. So it's believed that it was a literal wound and that he appeared to die and had this propped up resurrection that would have everybody in wonder and shock. I mean, this guy was Satan's ultimate masterpiece of deception. So what happens when you get everyone to wonder like that? Well, the next thing is going to be that they worship. And so the whole world was filled with wonder. Verse 3, and followed the beast. And it said in verse 4, it said, and the people worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And they also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? And who can wage war against him? Well, naturally, that's what you would think. Because if this guy had been wounded to the point of death and suddenly was resurrected, everybody is thinking, oh my God, who's going to stop that? I mean, when this guy comes back from the dead, which is going to appear very much that's what took place. He had a mortal wound. He was basically wounded in the head, and I believe that to be not symbolic, I believe that literally is what's going to happen. But they said, who can wage war against this guy? And verse 5 said, the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months, for 3.5 years. That's going to be an interesting thing. This is going to be an amazing orator. Somebody's going to stand up, excuse me, and they're going to have the power to speak and to say things, to sway the world for the most part. And verse 6 says, it opened its mouth to blaspheme God and slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. And it was given power, look at this, to wage war against God's holy people and to overcome them, to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. So you can see that this is final world domination. It's a final world dominating empire is what's being raised. It's going to be over every tribe, every people, every language, and every nation. That's how far reaching the authority is going to be. And it said, all the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life. So that shows me there that what's going to happen, although all the world is worshiping the beast, there's going to be a remnant that is not. There's going to be some they're just not. We're not going there. And he said, all inhabitants will worship the beast. All those names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life. And let me just say something to you. There is a Lamb's book of life. If you go to the end of this book, you're going to see, and I saw the dead, both small and great, stand before God. And it said, the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. That's the Lamb's Book of Life. Now, it said everyone was judged out of the things that were written in the books. That's the reward system right there. And the dead, both small and great, rich and poor, they all stood before God. We're going to give account for the things that we have done on this earth. This is our stewardship. You have to understand, everything that you do has consequences. Everything that you do has reward. Even Jesus said, you can't give a cup of water to somebody in my name and lose your reward. Well, what reward is he talking about? That's going to be written down in those books. It's kept, and you're going to receive a reward for that. So what that says to me, if I could just take this little side note, everything that you do here positions you there. Now, I'm not talking about being saved. Your name is in the Lamb's Book of Life. You are born again. That's the judgment is not against you there, or for you there. The judgment, basically, I'm saved, but now the books have to do with your activities. It does not have to do with your salvation. It has to do with your stewardship, what you've done on this earth. Those are the things that's going to determine what you do there. So he said, verse 8, let me go back and read that. All the inhabitants of the earth worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's Book of Life. The Lamb who was slain from the foundation, from the creation of the world. He said, whoever has ears, let him hear. If anyone will go into captivity, they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. He said, this calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Now, there's a couple of things that we know here as we begin to look at this chapter. I want to just go over with you a couple of things we know. We know that the Antichrist is coming. The beast is coming. We know that he rose up out of the sea, out of the nations. We know he had universal authority. He had universal adoration. We know that he's going to persecute and martyr God's people. We know that's going to happen. And we know he won't come alone. We know that he will have a counterpart, which is what we know as the false prophet, chapter 16, 19, 20, and here in 13. We also see the same thing, because he said in verse 11, he said, I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. Now, this is interesting because the first beast came out of the sea. That was the sea of nations, the sea of people. But when it refers to the earth, it is usually referring to Israel, someone who is Israeli, someone who is of the seed of Abraham. And so it is believed that, well, let me just read that. I saw a second beast coming out of the earth, and it had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. So it's believed that he is Jewish because the land is what is referred to pretty universal as the Holy Land. The Holy Land. He has two horns like a lamb. Is going to be a kinder and a gentler beast. But he speaks with deception under the influence of the dragon. Now, he has no crowns, no political authority. His role is spiritual, to deceive the nations into a worship system. That's what he does. So he deceives people who dwell on the earth by signs. There's going to be signs and wonders that are going to be demonstrated by this false prophet. And his primary role is deception. Primary means that it is signs. He's going to have signs and wonders that he's going to show. And his primary incentive, you're going to find, is, as we get into this a little bit further down, is the economy. He's going to gain control over people through that method. People's vulnerability is going to be at an all-time high during that time. And they'll almost be willing to do anything just basically to feed their family. They will be at a point to where we will do whatever we have to do. I mean, well, people will. Desperation causes desperate actions. As people become desperate, it's almost like they start reaching for anything that they can find. And they're going to be extremely vulnerable during this time. Now, let me say this. People have thought that there would be a European leader, basically, that would rise up, that would be this person. They thought that he would come out of the European nations because they thought it basically was going to be the reviving of the old Roman Empire. I personally feel that that's looking in the wrong direction. I don't think that's going to take place. Much of the Roman Empire has been completely swamped by Islam, by different nations. I just don't see that happening as I look at it today. Now, maybe back 50 years ago, we would have had a different viewpoint. But as I look at what's happening in the world population today, I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that it's most likely going to come out of Islam. And, we don't have enough time at this point to talk to you about the world domination of Islam. I mean, if you begin to look at the creeds that they have and the covenants that they've made as to their destruction of Israel, and you're going to find that 2/3 of Jews, they're going to be killed. I'm just telling you. And Islam has promised to do that, but there's so many things that point to Islam concerning the false prophet, concerning Jesus, concerning all the things of these end times. And as a matter of fact, even Daniel made the statement, said that the coming world ruler is going to intend to change the times and the law. Well, Muslim documents say that in the Modi, that says that they're going to throw out all human constitutions, which would include the United States Constitution, and they're going to enact worldwide Sharia law. I mean, this is something that literally is written in their documents, their constitution, basically. And again, we can get into that a little bit later on. But it said that he will also change the calendars and go back to the right calendar, which is the Islamic calendar following the migration of Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. So there's a lot of things that are pointing to me to Islam and not necessarily to the European nations. I just really believe it's going to come out of that. And I really believe that the ability to make a covenant between the nation of Islam and Israel is only going to be done by someone from that religion. So I really believe that that's going to be the very source of it. And again, when I have more time, we can get into that in another teaching. But I just want to kind of veer your thoughts away from the traditional way that we've looked at where this thing was going to rise up, and maybe see it from another perspective, okay? Now, let's go on to verse 12. It says, it exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf. So the false prophet is going to exercise all of the authority of the first beast. The Antichrist is going to rise up on his behalf and make the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. So see, even there, it talks about that was the deception that he was able to steer people to this charismatic figure who wasn't just probably a man, but now is elevated to the part of God, where he was able literally to raise from the dead. So he was drawing their worship to this first beast whose fatal wound had been healed. And verse 13 says, and it performed great signs, causing fire to come down from heaven to the people of earth in full view of the people. It's going to be amazing. And because of the signs, verse 14 says, it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast. It deceived the inhabitants of the earth and ordered them to set up an image of honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. So see, that false prophet's going to have all of these demonstrating powers of influence that's going to point back to the worship of the first beast, the Antichrist, who had been wounded by a sword, verse 14, and yet lived. Verse 15 said, the second beast was given power to breathe to the image of the first beast so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. Verse 16 says, it also forced all the people, small, rich, poor, slave, and free, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their forehead. Now, this has really been a source of controversy for quite some time. To receive the mark of the beast, as we know it as 666. Well, let me just go ahead. Let me just go ahead and read these last three verses, then we'll come back and comment on them. Force all the people, verse 16, both small, rich, poor, free, slave, to receive a mark in or on their right hand or their forehead, so that they could not buy nor sell unless they had the mark, which the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom, verse 18. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and that number is 666, 603 score and six. Okay? So, the mark of the beast, we used to kind of look at that as being I don't know, almost an impossibility. What does that even mean? You know, of course, I mean, I would date myself because I remember, I think it was even 1980 before anybody even had a personal computer. The idea of scanning things and being able to transfer commerce that way was just almost unthinkable. I remember back in the 60s, there was a show called Star Trek. And they had these cool doors that every time you walked up to the doors, it would swish, and they would open, and then they would close after you walked through that. And I'd heard the story that NASA had gone to them there on that set and said, listen, we really would like to know, how did you do that? How are you opening those doors like that? Of course, they had them manually open. Somebody was on each side. They were manually opening and closing them. And that was unheard of. But right now, I guarantee you, those of you that are going into a shopping center of any kind today, if the doors didn't open for you, you most likely literally would just walk right into them. So, I mean, these are things now that are possible now that really were quite impossible in those days. You remember the cartoon, The Jetsons? The Jetsons back in the early 60s, they projected more I don't want to say prophetic things, but they projected more devices than any other show, period. I mean, the treadmill. They didn't have treadmills back in those days. Internet conference calls. You remember Jetson was always trying to get away from his boss, and his boss would come on the TV screen yelling at him. There was a face-to-face conference call that was made. Of course, they did that back in the 40s with Dick Tracy, where he had what we would call an iPhone watch, to where he would look on there and actually be able to converse with his chief back at headquarters. But I mean, there's so many things that wasn't even possible back, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It wasn't possible. And the idea of having a number on every person to where they couldn't buy or sell, that was unthinkable. I remember hearing about the big machine that they called the Beast. And it was a big 6-story building with nothing but a computer. And people were reaching for it, trying to create something. And they may have had a very large computer. And it's possible they even called it the Beast. But listen, my cell phone right now has 10 times the capacity that big beast had back then. I mean, technology has gone so far that it makes you dizzy. Literally, knowledge is increasing by the hour, probably doubling by the hour. And so things that were completely impossible then are just normal day-to-day operations now. Well, we certainly see that with this situation, because right now they're just saying this is the number of a man, and his number is 603 score and 666. And so it's saying that every man's going to have to receive a mark, and is going to receive it in his forehead or his hand. Well, we didn't know what that was either. And if I could just kind of broaden your perspective, one way that you can look at it is you can just, listen, you can walk by. I don't even have to put my credit card now under the scanner. I can walk by and it'll pick it up if that's what they wanted to do. But the fact is I don't buy or sell right now without my credit card number. So we see that man is already in the position of a cashless society to where you're buying things right now, whether you know it or not, by a computer system that is cashless. It has your credit card number, and it's able to pick that up and transfer funds from here to here. And if you don't have that, if that doesn't, have you ever been in a place where you tried to order something and the credit card didn't work or didn't go through? Well, it just didn't go through. They're not selling it to you. Bad number. Try it again. Well, I could see that happening. I mean, couldn't you see that taking place? I could see that taking place really easy, to the point that if you didn't have this number in your forehead, your hand, could it be the fact that you know the number, or is it something that is actually an implant? I mean, they got implants right now to where the number literally can be under the skin and nobody even knows it's there. A lot of people have used those things as trackers for animals. They would put those things in their animals that if an animal got lost, they could track it. They could tell where it was. There was a suggestion even of doing that with your children, that if your children were ever lost, that you could track them and would know exactly where they were, which is a brilliant idea. It's just that it's going to be used by the beast to bring about this final few moments in history. So, I mean, all of these things show that technology actually is going to give us the capacity now to fulfill everything that is done. And so it's giving reference to this guy as to being a mark from a person. It's the mark of a man. So the mark of the beast is not something taken by accident. This is something where people are going to know what it means at that time, which is going to be the worshiping of the beast and the rejection of God. And those that refuse to take the mark, well, such as Christians, you're going to be unable to buy or sell anything. And there's going to be many people that are going to be executed. So the mark is connected in some unknown way to a figure, 666, as we see here in this book. And I might even question, how in the world could that take place? You say, well, how could that happen? Well, can I just kick you back just a very short time? Do you remember when this COVID scare came up? Would you look at how society responded over the COVID shot? People, family members, neighbors turned on each other. They became insane over this. They became vicious over this. Friends that betrayed one another, turning people in. They were trying, and it was all motivated by fear. Well, don't you think that fear is not going to be involved in this 13th chapter of the book of Revelation? Fear is going to grip the hearts of men. Wonder, amazement, fear. And now you've got these people over here. It's going to be the same thing. Just, well, they didn't take a shot. Well, we're going to put them out of our way. We don't even want to talk to you. Mask? Are you kidding? Do you remember how lunatic people became over the mask? Which it was said by many experts later, the mask did nothing. But yet that didn't make any difference to a lot of people. It was almost like they drank the Kool-Aid and they went crazy over it to the point of assassinating relationships. And it was a horrible, horrible thing. People turned on each other. And so that could very easily happen in this situation where people are turning on each other, turning people in, even knowing that they're going to be killed. They're going to be assassinated for it. But somehow, when people get this in their mindset, they begin to justify it in their mind. So this is kind of what it's going to be, is this man, this beast, is going to wield the power, and it's going to be undergirded by the signs and wonders of the second beast that's going to rise up and working in tandem together under the influence of the dragon. They're going to bring the whole world to their knees in this situation, and it's going to be an incredibly interesting thing. So I will say, somebody say, why 666? Well, we know it asserts to be the number of a man. Depending on how that text is translated, it's associated with a beast. We know that. The repetition of the 666, 3 times, it seems to indicate that there might be called a completeness of sinful incompleteness, and found in the beast. And it's suggested further by the phrase, for the number that is a man, could be translated individually as for as the number of a specific person, or generically as for the number of humanity. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can look at that. But we do know one thing, that this is going to be something that is very, very encompassing, and the whole world is going to be brought under the authority of it. And so it's going to be something that certainly is worth giving our attention to, and we're going to see how he brings everything to a head at that point. So anyway, I want to try to escape from chapter 13 here. There's so much. Please forgive me there. I would love to be more comprehensive, but simply can't. There's just too much. But I encourage you to do your own research and let me scathe over the top of it and just give you a few points for you to be thinking about. Thank you for joining me today. If you would like more information, you can go to jerryedmond.com, and I've got a whole ton of resources there that can be a blessing to you. I appreciate you being with me. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you. I love you guys. Please leave a note. Share this with somebody. I think it'll be a blessing. All right. I'm out of here. I'll plan on seeing you in the next chapter. Bye-bye.